Reign in Hell's expansion, the Oculus Spear, is a pay-what-you-want dedicated solo/co-op experience that is built around 6 made-for-purpose scenarios. If you're familiar with solo miniatures gaming, you'll find this is a common solo play setup, as seen in what is likely the best-known contemporary solo system, Rangers of Shadowdeep. This scenario gauntlet reminds me of classic video game design. There are levels, you must get through them, defeat the final level, and you win the game. In Oculus Spear's case, there are 6 of these scenarios, with the final one being a boss fight against a single, powerful enemy. Since Reign in Hell is a campaign game, the solo expansion lets you use the campaign progression as you run through this gauntlet, making tweaks to your cabal as you go through the story. If you'd like to see the campaign systems gone over in more detail, you can watch my full video review of Reign in Hell here. Before writing up this review, I played through the campaign in solo mode exactly once, playing 6 games, each scenario once, and managing to defeat the boss on my first try. Spoilers, I got really lucky on this run. Do not expect to defeat, or even to make it to the final boss on your first go. For my run, I chose to use Fungicorp, my broker's cabal from my first run through Reign in Hell. They did not do well in that campaign, and I wanted to see if I could make them work. This time, as per my own recommendations, I ran a warrior leader alongside the Taliman Devout with a couple of slaughter fiends, a tentacle beast, a corpulent demon, and a mephit. They did fine. The Taliman's soul leeching ability does not really work in the dedicated solo mode, and the Taliman in general is just a really bad devout, but the philosophy's ability to just latently generate way more souls really helps keep their demons in tip-top shape across the scenarios. Going into Oculus Spear, you will notice that each scenario specifies exactly how many models it will need, in both solo and co-op configurations. It will also specify terrain layouts, but will still require you to vary the terrain in most of the setups. This gives the setup step for the solo campaign a nice, achievable checklist of models and terrain. Each scenario in the campaign is a specific design meant to test the cabal in a certain mechanical fashion. All of them are heavily combat focused, save for Scenario 5, which takes a whack at stealth and exploration. We'll get to that one later. Each scenario, except for Scenario 5, features a different kind of enemy, each enemy running on a different kind of AI flowchart. These flowcharts are a nice middle ground between the behavioral suggestions of 5 parsecs from home and the explicit randomized steps of 1-page rules. They are a smidge on the wordy side, but will thoroughly take into account activation order, target priority, and the nature of the demon's attacks. Some scenarios will have a leader enemy that works off slightly different AI than the regular demons. These leaders will inevitably be the most dangerous models on the board, and you'll probably want them dead as per the victory conditions. In all cases, the AI will work off rigged activation points as if they had rolled the same set of initiative dice every turn. They will also usually activate multiple models at a time, usually a third or a fourth of their number. Much like 5 parsecs, this gives the AI a foundation of predictability that the player can plan around. It can really help inform the player's decision making, especially as you come to the end of the turn and plan out for the next one. The scenarios in Oculus Spear are heavily curated and are some of the tightest solo scenario designs I have had the pleasure of playing so far. Most of the scenarios will be over in 5 turns. That will normally translate to 5 activations for each of your demons, and it can quickly feel like you are running out of decisions to make. This pressure and difficulty gives Oculus Spear a certain edge to it that isn't quite present in other miniatures games in the same format. In terms of the mood this design invokes, I'd say it swings much closer to the popular living card game Arkham Horror. There is a tangible time limit creeping up on your heels, and the game's variable math keeps you constantly on your toes. As a campaign progression-powered scenario gauntlet, I think one of Oculus Spear's weirder design quirks is how it chooses to handle fail states, specifically around the midpoint of the campaign. At this point, if you lose a scenario, the system simply tells you to redo the same scenario at a small penalty. Now, mechanically, this isn't so bad. You're given another go, which means more XP and potentially more souls and more rolls on the rewards table. However, you are repeating something that you have already seen. I don't think this feels particularly good, especially not if you're playing co-op with a friend. I think a more interesting route to have taken would be to just have the story go on regardless of loss and penalize the Cabal going into the next scenario. Add in special interesting conditions to the later scenarios that are triggered by the losses you have. Basically, do what Arkham Horror does. This lets the player keep their narrative momentum while still giving them the feeling of being on the ropes. One other personal sore spot would be Scenario 5, which is an experimental, randomization-heavy stealth and exploration kind of design. There are cool ideas here, but I am not a fan of the rolling road setup. I am not a fan of resetting up the board, not a fan of recycling the totally randomized enemies from other scenarios, and not a fan of the chance to just instantly win the game on your first interaction with a ruin. I think the majority of this scenario could have been done off the table, without models and measurements, in the menus, so to speak, like one of those choose-your-own-adventure segments from a contemporary CRPG. Now, I won't give away much else at this point, as the rules you learn and the fluff you read through as you go through the campaign are a big part of the experience. I will still moan about one thing though, which is the defensive demons. The corpulent I took did jack and all for 5 games, but it did get its moment in the sun by tanking 2 activations from the last boss, which did get me the clutch win, so I can't be too mean. Rain in Hell Oculus Spear feels like a well-polished, thoroughly play-tested set of scenarios. If you enjoyed the base Rain in Hell experience, this will be a very refreshing change of pace. And if you are a fan of solo gaming, you will find that this game's difficulty will give it a hell of a bite. Thank you very much for watching.